All right, so welcome into the live stream today. We're going to be diving into Bitcoin, talking about the current little bit of a run on Bitcoin, Ethereum, along with the idea that Cardano should adopt Bitcoin, or maybe Bitcoin should adopt Cardano. We're going to dive into all that stuff. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. This is a big one today, I think, obviously, with the president and the research that is coming out in terms of the position of the U.S. government and how they're going to address cryptocurrencies and what this really kind of indicates for the future of proof of work. Now, a lot of the Bitcoin maxis that are out there obviously have been really pushing the narrative, along with miners, pushing the narrative that we are getting cleaner and all this kind of stuff. That has repositioned Bitcoin as what could be the alpha class investment, especially when it comes to cryptocurrencies. There are others, though, that are kind of going another direction. I want to show you a few things on this. Before we get started, I want to, of course, thank our sponsor, and that is Bybit today. Next level trading for sure. They have a cool thing going on right now, which is the Trading Fiesta. It's also a trading competition. Let me zoom up on that for you guys just a little bit. ETH derivatives trading with a 300,000 USDC prize pool. You can also do some other derivative pairs with a 700,000 USDC prize pool, and then also doing an ETH perpetual drop on a deposit of $1,000 to get a 1,000 perpetual airdrop as well. So use our link in the description below. It's really easy to sign up. So a lot happening over there on Bybit. If you're looking at one of the best trading tools out there, I would say this is one of them. All right, let's get into it around what Charles Hoskinson had. Charles Hoskinson, for those of you who are new to our channel, maybe new to crypto, is one of the lead devs and essentially kind of the leader at will, I guess, of the Cardano Nation. And he had a lot to say about what was happening with this proposal and this research that was coming out on cryptocurrency that the president and other lawmakers will be guiding their regulations on based on a lot of these findings. So a lot to be said here. Let me kind of jump to a few clips for you guys and take a listen in. Let's go with the first clip. What was happening with this proposal
now, it's kind of
and
funny.
this research that was coming out on cryptocurrency that the president getting feedback there. Why am I'm getting feedback? Okay, we'll try it again. Maybe it's coming up. Be said here. Let me kind of jump to a few clips for you guys and take a listen in. Let's go with the first clips there. What was happening with this proposal
it's kind of
and
funny.
This research that was coming out on cryptocurrency that the president. Okay, so I'm getting some crazy feedback here, and it might be. I think I'm getting know where it might be coming from. We'll try it again. Let me find it. Maybe it's coming. Be said here. Let me kind of jump to a few clips. I'm just getting feedback of the live stream itself. It's coming back to me. Anyway, what Charles had to say was really a couple of things. One was the initiative around the whole research program that was really indicating what the potential of Bitcoin is in terms of the mining capacity and the implications on the overall impact on our environment. And the alignment here within, and it's a 42-page report or so, and I'll definitely show you guys some of this. And let me kind of jump to some of these details right here. This was the climate and energy implication of crypto assets in the U.S. Now, this again, as I said, is a long report, so don't get too crazy. I'm going to go to a few highlights that really showcase what the report's about, and then also some of the key points within it. So right here you've got, let me zoom up on that. So sometimes Weave can be a little crazy. From 2018 to 22, they're talking about what the annualized global crypto assets and its growth, estimates of electricity usage doubling to quadrupling as of August 2022. Published estimates of total grid is pretty significant on this. So kind of crazy on this overall. And 120 to 240 billion kilowatt hours per year. A range exceeds the total annual electricity usage for many individual countries such as Argentina or Australia. Mainly saying, hey, that Bitcoin essentially is in alignment with what some of the overall growth countries are actually dealing with. Despite the potential for rapid growth, future electrical demand from the crypto assets, the crypto assets operations uncertain. Electricity can change kind of where the miners ramp their activities up or down, meaning that they could get into new equipment and new technologies that would essentially eliminate that. If that were the case, if we started to see the scenario of Bitcoin in general going into a position to where we have new technologies, new mining equipment, et cetera, could reduce that. But I think the bigger picture here is one that is really around the amount of electricity that obviously Bitcoin uses and in general mining uses. And I'll show you some variations here across all aspects of that. But one thing they notice right here is Texas may see an additional 25 gigawatts of new electricity demand from crypto asset mining, equivalent to a third of the existing peak electrical demand in Texas. This increase raises potential challenges for the maintaining the electricity reliability, obviously there within the grid. We know a lot about what happened with Texas for sure. And there was a little bit others. They kind of outlined proof of work to really kind of give it some clarity. And then also, yeah, it's sometimes if I zoom out, whoa, it gets going crazy. There we go. There we go. Maybe that's a little better. Hopefully that, yeah, there we go. Okay, so you can kind of see some of this report. It's a little hard because this is a PDF that we try to mark up for you guys. But they get into the alternative, less energy intensive consensus mechanism called proof of stake. And they talk about this in its global electricity usage. It's considerably lower than, as you guys know, that's one of the reasons that we're seeing all this happen. The other aspect of this that is in this report, the United States is obviously trying to meet this climate objective, which is 50% to 52% reduction in CHG emissions by 2030. This is the carbon pollution free electricity system by 2035 and net zero emissions, all that good stuff by 2050. Whether they can do that with what's happening with the increased hash rate is the big question, I think, right now. There's some other points in here I'll showcase to you guys what they're talking about. And this is one of the statements that was a little alarming, but government must take strong steps to reduce the risk and digital assets could pose consumers, investors, and business protections, financial inclusion, and equity, and climate change, along with pollution. So this is a big area that I think is going to become one of the significant components around not only the midterms, but I think in general, the types of scenarios that a lot of our lawmakers and incoming politicians will be showcasing their support for or their support against. And I think with Bitcoin obviously doing so much on the global stage, along with some of the things we've already started to see with Mika and also happening in the UK and Europe, it's going to get pretty competitive out there for sure. Now, there's a couple other points here I wanted to highlight that were pretty interesting, and one of them was this right here. All right, so annual electricity, this is billion kilowatt hours. So there's the country of Australia, global data centers, global crypto assets right there, Argentina, and then global Bitcoin. You can kind of see it. Obviously, you get into just the refrigerators in the United States data centers, the US home lighting, and then global Ethereum comes in, along with TVs, crypto assets across the US side, and then US home computers. This doesn't really get into some of the other sectors that I want to showcase to you guys as well. But I was surprised to see that the entire country of, now granted, most of Australia is, open land, kind of like our West. So not a lot of major cities there outside the East and the West Coast. So I could see that where it could kind of be a comparison. But I think when you get into some of the other sectors, that's the other capacity I think that a lot of people aren't giving into consideration around where Bitcoin is going. Because I do think over time, we're going to continue to see this kind of fall off in terms of Bitcoin mining. And I do want to show you a couple other grids here that was in the report. Here it is right here. Crypto asset mining can be powered by stranded methane and renewables. So they are researching inside the report alternatives that could be utilized, and methane was one of them. This is methane gas produced during natural gas drilling and transmission. We've talked about this here on the show. In fact, we've had some teams on our show that are doing this very type of mining. I think the fact that they're going this deep into the type of technologies and use cases is actually pretty impressive because, and the report is very in-depth and it's very well done. And unfortunately, it does make Bitcoin kind of look a little bit on the bad side. And I think over time, This is a narrative that I think we will have to see more and more push to, and that is better mining facilities, more efficiency, a lot more off-grid, and a lot more use case of overages that we have obviously out there. Well, I'll kind of highlight this in a minute. This is another point right here. In some areas of the United States, there's not enough demand for transmission capacity to use peak levels. This is what I'm talking about right here on generated renewables. This is wind, solar generators that temporarily produce and eliminate output in a process called curtailment. This is wasted renewable electricity. So it gets created and then we just can't use it. This is the thing that I think we will start to see more and more miners kind of going this direction. And we've already started to see that now, is miners getting near areas where they can use some of this overage of renewable energy for the mining capacity. So I think it still is a matter of being forced, and I think regulation will eventually work its way in. You know, it's kind of like death by a thousand cuts. I think regulation will start to integrate. They'll use things like the EPA and some other governance boards out there that will essentially put enough regulation in front of miners to either one, make them unprofitable, or two, position them out of business, at least in the United States. And the problem is that when we see this occur, if we do see this regulation, if you guys run businesses, you know the situation that we're kind of faced with, is that regulation pretty much kind of eliminates a lot of innovation in the entrepreneurial side of things. And that is one thing that I think could play into this kind of scenario. Another thing to kind of compare this to, this was a table that they pulled down on proof of work and proof of stake. And I can't zoom in too close, but you've got Bitcoin right there on the top line, running at date of estimate. This was August 15th this year. Best estimate around 88.6 terawatt hours. Then you go down to Ethereum running at around 93.9. Then Cardano, which essentially is running at negative. And then you go into Solana, which is running at around 2, 3.8 for Doge, Polkadot on negative, and then Avalanche at about 4.9. So you can see the big difference here with the total amount of usage and electricity needed to run these. So obviously with Ethereum, all of that's going to change in a few weeks. We'll see a complete shift over to obviously a 99.9% reduction in carbon emissions with the new proof of stake. So that in itself is going to be a big one. Now, the interesting thing that that talked about, Charles Hoskinson talked about, was that he kind of alluded to the fact that maybe Cardano was the better one to go. This was back, right now they're running at 6 terawatt hours right now, and Solana's running at 2 terawatt hours. So it kind of showcased that Solana was actually a little bit more efficient in this area. So interestingly enough, his argument was kind of interesting on where this was going around the overall usage of electricity. And his whole idea was, hey, maybe we should, he's a little bit antagonistic, I think, of the Bitcoin maxis for sure. I don't know if I can play this again. I'm going to try it one more time. Interestingly enough, his argument was kind of interesting on a weird thing coming in from the audio. I do want to say it. Mainly, go to Twitter. You'll be able to find this tweet by him. And I'm going to give you some timestamps to listen to for this. 425, you want to listen to him where he's talking about Bitcoin maxis. At 554, you want to talk about proof of useful work. Listen to that piece. And then Bitcoin maxis versus proof of stake. That's about 735 on that clip. Just check it out on Twitter. You'll go to Charles Hoskinson, IOHK_Charles. It'll get into it because we got a lot of other things to cover here that I want to get to that really kind of aligns with what he's talking about. Here's the other aspect right here. U.S. electricity generation by energy source. This was surprising to me. If you look at some of the things that are happening in right here, fossil fuels still leading the way with natural gas, coal, still a big part of it, and then petroleum, a much smaller area. Then you get into nuclear, not as much, and renewables are total at 826 billion kilowatt hours versus what we've got up here at just a ridiculous amount right there at 2504 in the billion kilowatt hours over on fossil fuels. So I was kind of surprised that we had not come along further in this area, but this is a great report here from EIA which is the U.S. Energy Information Administration. A lot there. The other area that I wanted to take a look at here was total energy consumption over time, to kind of look at the comparison. Has there been any kind of major moves? And when you look at this right now, you've got residential, which is the blue line, commercial, the black line, and then transportation, the red, and the gray line setting in at industrial. And you'll notice this is all the way back to 2000, which is where I'm hovered right now. And energy consumption has been about flat right there. So this is an old grid. It is climbing right here at about 2016. It starts to accelerate, and that's on transportation mostly. Then a big dip right there on transportation. Everybody knows what happened then. Same thing with residential, manufacturing. I mean, literally, when you shut down an economy, that's how you essentially erase what was about 15 years of growth. And then right back up to somewhat, but not completely return on residential at 2092, commercial, and transportation is a big one, 2694, versus right here where it was at 2867 pre-pandemic. So when you look at this chart, it does not appear that we're completely blowing out the electrical consumption. Now, granted, there is an argument that we have an aging grid. All those kind of things do play into it. But at the same time, we are in a position right now where not only do we have an aging grid, but we also have an advancing technology in electricity and the unification and electrification of the vehicle fleet here within the United States. Obviously, Tesla is doing a ton of work against that. So I think with all that, along with wind and solar, there are some initiatives, I think, in place. And you kind of saw it in the other chart where it showed the comparison fossil fuels. I think there's enough growth there. It looks very efficient when you start to put the numbers to it, that it's maybe not as bad as everybody thinks. Now, there are hot spots. Don't get me wrong. There are hot spots out there. We'll talk about California and Texas being one of them. Ironically, knock on wood, we're in Florida, but we have not seen these kind of things, and the population density has a lot of similarities to California and even Texas to a certain extent. There is some new research also that Bitcoin consumes less than half the energy of the banking or gold industry. So this is the other factor that is not necessarily being indicated here in terms of the research, is the findings that other researchers are doing around other industries. Now, this right here, this was a report that was really recently released by Galaxy Digital, which is Mike Novogratz and his team. Right here, it says calculated energy consumed by the Bitcoin. We'll kind of zoom in on that. Has calculated by the Bitcoin network and then compared it to other industries, including banking. And it found that Bitcoin consumes 113 terawatt hours per year, while banking consumes 263. So double the amount in terms of banking as a whole. So which is running basically the dollar system. So I think this is the other kind of research that I think needs to be more and more out there in the open. This is one that we've talked about before, but if you look at just kind of a comparison here, right here on the chart, it's not real clear, but banking system, gold right up there with it, and then Bitcoin setting at a much lower percentage of total terawatt hours. Now, the difference is that the banking system and gold are not doing anything that I know of or that's in the news to start reducing emissions other than what's required by the government. Bitcoin, on the other hand, that's all they're doing because their entire model is based on building a business on the best case of low energy costs. So it's to their benefit, any kind of miner, to really reduce how all this plays into it. So it's a big one. If you look at the Bitcoin mining map, this is kind of a good example. And if you go over and hover right here on the United States, we're at 37.84% of the hash rate right now. Then you compare this to where China was. China is now at 21.1%. And then some of the other zones out there that are really kind of hot, but the comparison that kind of plays into this is going to be the cost of energy. So even though the United States is doing a great job at, I think, in general, trying to get to a net zero and also making initiatives to try to keep up with the demand of what's happening in the essence of what Bitcoin's innovation is, there's a lot still yet to come. And I think there's going to be some interesting parts of the world that we're going to see that become new mining hot zones. Here's a good example of one right here. Yeah. Here's a good example of one right here, which is the cost to mine 1 Bitcoin. And some of the areas you'll notice that are hot zones right here. Obviously, the United States, let me zoom in on that for you guys right there. $21,000 to mine a Bitcoin. You can kind of see if you look at some of the other areas that are in there. If you look at Brazil, $33,000 to mine a Bitcoin. Panama, $50,000. Ethiopia setting at 7,000. So we've got a lot of areas, providing that we've got enough renewable energy that are in Africa. Then you go up into the Central Europe. You've got Tunisia at 15,000. Then you get into some of the other areas. There's Morocco at 24,000, Libya. Some of these areas are not safe enough to do it, but some of these areas are very safe. And then you get into Eastern Europe, Malta setting at 37. And then you can kind of flow in right here on what's happening in Northern Europe, which is Ireland, Belgium, all those areas, which are pretty much equivalent to what's happening here in the United States. So globally, there's not a tremendous number of areas that are perfect for Bitcoin miners. So they are looking for the most efficient areas. And I think the United States, along with some other Western countries, could be the most efficient areas in terms of energy, next generation alternatives, things of that nature, which is really what it will boil down to. And then you need and must have the type of environment around the whole business component. So many of those kind of things really play into this. Let me get into a couple of other things here for you guys, and then we'll jump over to some of our additional material. All right. Crypto miners pushing up electricity costs. This is the other one where people are kind of putting out FUD, I think, this is a Berkeley Haas working paper that estimates the power demand on cryptocurrency mining operations. This was in upstate New York. And if you think about what this did with New York, now it wasn't necessarily due to this report, but the idea is the framework of what's being put around this is pretty significant. Operations in upstate New York push annual electric bills by about 165 million for small businesses and 75 million for individuals. So that's really a push, again, toward crypto mining, that it's causing businesses around them to see an increase in electrical costs. So that in itself is a problem. Then you have California's power grid, which is struggling to cope with extreme heat. At the same time, you also have California struggling just to cope with technology, because had they not put out a text alert, it would have eventually kind of shut the lights off in California. These are the kind of things that when I look at not only governments, but also just in general, I think our society is we are all trying to move to this more renewable lifestyle. Hopefully we'll see this in a very near place. I think Bitcoin is one of the things that causes a shift to happen and pushing in this place because of its demand on electricity and its need. Now, granted, we're seeing more and more. We talked to the team at Hut 8 quite a bit and other mining companies that tell us we see all these new renewable opportunities and this amount of energy that's being stored that is always available in excess that they're starting to gain access to. So I think that also is going to be a big factor here. When you look at Texas, it's not just the left, but also the right. So you've got both angles really struggling to maintain their states. You've got, obviously we know about Texas' faulty power grid. This was a little different scenario because Abbott, when he was in, this is Senator Abbott, or Governor Abbott there in Texas, this was in reference to Winter Storm Uri. And this was a bad thing in Texas. There was 4 days no electric when it was freezing cold temperature. A lot of people, a lot of harsh, and there were some deaths. So big deal. But the whole thing really boiled down to many insiders believe that the grid was vulnerable because of the grid system in Texas was deregulated. So this was a result of the Enron founder, Ken Lake, and this was convincing Governor George Bush at the time to embrace the free market and end state-imposed regulation. All that already happened in Texas, which of course got into ERCOT, and ERCOT is really the big problem in Texas. So here's an example. It would seem logical for Texas to impose sweeping reforms to ensure similar tragedy wouldn't be avoided or wouldn't happen again. And so they did initiate in March 2021, they passed 2 bills, which gave the governor added control over ERCOT. So it didn't really change that ERCOT was involved in this. It just gave the governor more control over ERCOT. How this plays out in another, position of stress will be another issue to watch. So again, and this will only highlight the grid in Texas, which is where a lot of Bitcoin miners have moved. So we need to be on the lookout for how Texas is dealing with this. Here was a statement in here in February. Abbott said that the Texas electric grid is the most reliable and resilient it's ever been. Critics disagree. He's stating that the ERCOT grid has never been stronger. And this is a University of Houston Energy fellow. He says, given that it's been the worst and the weakest in the nation, that is not saying much. Abbott complains that Biden's policies in favor of renewables have weakened the grid. So there, as you can see, this is becoming a political play. The fact that we have a proof of work situation occurring at a very high level in cryptocurrency with Ethereum coming off the grid, I think is a good thing. That will be one major step in overall cryptocurrencies as a whole to really kind of move in this direction. So I think in essence, we've got a lot happening in the right way. I think it's just a matter of time before others see it. Now, jumping back to Cardano, they, of course, there's some interesting things happening there. Becomes a top holding for BNB whales. This is as the Basel hard fork, of course, is approaching. Cardano's making a little bit of moves. We're going to jump to our sentiment data to give you guys kind of an insight on some things that we were able to call this week and show you a little bit of how it indicated some of the moves that we're seeing and experiencing right now on Bitcoin. So this one right here is Cardano's regains position as one of the top 10 holdings of whales on the BNB chain, which was formerly known as the Smart Chain, everybody knows. As an investor, many of them are betting on Cardano based on this Basel hard fork. So again, this is coming over from Whale Stats. If you guys aren't following this one, it's a good one to follow. It's a great Twitter account that really kind of tracks a lot of the on-chain data that's out there for sure. Next up, of course, is Gensler. And this, again, gets into a position right now where I feel that we're going to continue to see this kind of regulatory guidance and research coming out of Biden's executive orders to get this data in front of lawmakers. It's only going to give power to a lot of these legislative bodies and regulator bodies that is going to push them into a direction like what you're seeing right here with Gensler signaling support for commodities regulator, having Bitcoin oversight. That's good. But again, going into the whole aspect of the battle around and what we're talking about when it comes to the situation with the power and electricity consumption and how that's going to play into the midterms, what it's going to do into our elections over 2024. A lot of this really, I think, is starting to come together in terms of a potential for what Bitcoin could be perceived as. Is it a savior? Is it a drain on our resources? Many people, I think, are going to start arguing this much more out in the open and seeing some pretty big stuff. Further into this, we're not giving crypto a pass. As SEC enforcement chief, basically the quick take was they're not going to slow down legal actions against crypto enforcement division, director said, and then we're going to continue to bring actions regardless of what technology is used. What they talk about there is proof of stake. So big difference there, I think, in the sense that does this mean that we could be looking into the eyes of security tags across some of our favorite proof of stake tokens, altcoins that are out there in this case? So all that still, again, I think this situation with power consumption, carbon footprints, it's a good move by what ETH is doing. It's going to lead into what is happening around the merge. And I think this is at least showing the direction of where crypto can go. And it's a good thing. I think we're going to see more and more realization there and at least give the crypto advocates the ability to advocate for the position of where crypto with some new generational shifts that are beginning to occur. So cool stuff. Let's get into our sentiment. And I want to break down a couple of things and we'll get into some questions for you guys as well. Make sure and just drop some questions in over on the side if you have any. that you want to jump. If you've never come into our CPI, which is our power index, this is basically our power index. And I just want to show you our current data on our top crypto. So we currently track, and we're including more and more tokens, as you can see here. Right now, we are hovering at 18 tokens, 20 tokens now because of the new ones with Quant and Hedera. But if you look at some of the movement that we predicted here this week, what we watch, of course, is these this top line right here and this pink line right here. This is amplification. This is top line sentiment. Here's overall market sentiment right here. So it's moving up. We saw it moving up from Wednesday, really from last Friday. It moved up a little bit more, and then we saw, of course, or Monday, I'm sorry, Monday, and then Tuesday, and then our Wednesday, and then our date here on Friday, which was still climbing slightly, but the big move was right here to indicate what we're seeing right now within Bitcoin on their pump to 21K. So interesting stuff. If you were following it there, you would have known that dip was where we saw Bitcoin run down to 18, and then ahead of the actual rise in Bitcoin, sentiment was showing exactly where it was going. Same thing happened with Ethereum. Ethereum had a big shift right here between Monday and Friday, also climbing into what we're looking at now. So some pretty cool stuff here with the CPI. As I said, we cover the 20 tokens right here that we currently chart. These happen 3 times weekly. It's very easy to get involved in this. Just click the link below. We also cover the metaverse and gaming tokens. So we did a big call on Axie this week, and you can kind of also follow the implication of Axie, where we saw a little bit of flat line right here, and then this striking move on, big move on amplification in alignment with what was happening with the market. Obviously, AxieCon was happening, and we saw some movement on Axie Infinity as well. We did that with Render. We've done that with Near Protocol, Polkadot, Atom. Several of these have been called out on our CPI. So cool stuff. All right, let's get into some of your questions. And I know we have a poll coming in as well. Let's take a look at that one. Should Bitcoin adopt Cardano or proof of stake? No, Bitcoin's proof of work is perfect. And then yes, Bitcoin plus Cardano. That means the Cardano crowd is in here. Of course they are. I love that. Okay, it just never fails. If we put a Cardano poll up, it just cannot be beaten. It's untouchable. It's like Mike Tyson. It's untouchable. All right, let's get to a few questions. Why would anyone want proof of stake for Bitcoin? Well, the only reason is for efficiency against energy. And I think if we continue to see pressure coming at this technology from ill-informed regulators and lawmakers, you have to remove the barriers. And right now, we cannot remove the barriers. So the likelihood of something like this happening for Bitcoin, I think, is really irrelevant. I think it's more an issue around how the miners need to get as innovative as possible to get into renewables as quickly as possible, to then position the use case as one that's very, very positive. Hourglass Relax, miner companies are a minority compared to auto. Yes, I agree. That's why they're picking on Bitcoin. For sure. Yes, we were outlining this in the show today. Totally in a position right now where they're not getting the full picture. I think the crypto regulators and lawmakers that come into Capitol Hill in the coming years, they're not going to be influenced by this, false narrative that's being put out there. Because if you do compare it to other major industries, no, it's not as big or as big as of a threat. And it's only going to continue to go down because it's to their benefit to go down, because it's more profitable in many cases. Joe Mike, what was the current pump reflected in your CPI analysis? Let me pull that up. So we'll pull up a quick one here if I can give you guys a fast number on charts. All right, so Bitcoin is right here. So our numbers, we're picking right about there, which if you look back at our CPI data on Bitcoin, let me go back to Bitcoin real quick for you guys. Let's go to top crypto. you're getting a chance to see how you can navigate into the CPI. So what we were looking for is these early moves. This right here was what was happening. This move right here indicated this move right here. So our sentiment, of course, what we're seeing right now at 21.3, this was what was called about 36 hours ago on the CPI. So well ahead of where Bitcoin's move was going. We saw it yesterday. We were going to mention it on the show. And Evan, who is our other analyst, was still looking at a sideways action, even though our numbers, sometimes I have to look at our sentiment numbers more so than even our, our analytic numbers, especially coming from charts, because sentiment, when you look at top line sentiment and also amplification, which is the red line there, big moves happened right here between 9.6 and 9.7. And that was exactly what we started to see right here, because there's 9.6, there's 9.8. So right there was the move beginning, and then boom, right there it hits. And the trend is still slightly going up. So we're continuing to climb right here. There is a little bit of pressure here. There's a lot of sell pressure coming in on Bitcoin as well from different areas. Obviously, these are some different moving averages that we track along with volume. But we are looking at some big points right here. Line of resistance right here around 21.8. Then the next one, I think JP was pulling that at 23.5. Again, you can catch a lot of this stuff in our mastermind group, which is where we drop most of this stuff way in advance of when it makes it to a show, because it's usually after the fact. Let's get into this. When is Bitcoin going to 12K? Listen, I still think we have a down. Right now, we are on that, and many people were looking at when is and what would be the scenario of Ethereum's run to the merge, because could we get a pre-merge pump? Likelihood is that we're on it right now. Ethereum is holding at right now at 1736. I'm on the 4 hour right now. Let's take a quick look here. Again, Ethereum low right there. If you go back here to our numbers, let me zoom back out, go back down here to Ethereum. Right here was the move. Boom, boom. On the 6th, 7th, and trending up. Same kind of situation happened right here on the, as it was coming down, our sentiment was showing, watch out, we're getting ready to fly. And sure enough, boom, there was the first move, and then here is our second move over the last 24 hours. So another one running at Ethereum at that. So interesting way to do it. Thanks for the super chat, Frank. We appreciate it. Jen Smith, how much energy goes into gold mining? We just showed that. It's actually just under the entire banking system, Jen. Then came Bitcoin. So overall, when you look at the financial industries, banking was still number one. All the banks in the United States generate this. Probably also was not considered the amount of loans that they generate into carbon emission oil companies and fossil fuel companies. That's probably not even considered. If that were at play, I don't even know what the numbers would be on that. I think it might have been in that Galaxy Digital report. I'm going to try to get Novogratz on our show to talk about that report because it was pretty revealing. Halim, the energy consumption of the banking system can be reduced, of course, through XRP. You are correct. That, of course, changes the SWIFT. But remember, SWIFT is a messaging system that is a global cross-borderless payment technology. Though it would be slightly reduced, the biggest side of it is that you need to go to digital banking, which neobanks are really kind of going in that direction. Footprints of banks are the problem. And I know a lot of people like to walk in and see a bank, but I think we are going to a digital banking system, meaning no branches, no employees, no, thousands of employees, going to work every day, those kinds of scenarios. Work from home, I think, is also going to phase into this as well, where we might see a lot more regulations around white collar going in that direction, especially when it's, the kind of white collar workers that really could go into digital activities. All right. How much electricity does the Federal Reserve use? Probably not much because they don't do anything. They're not federal and they don't have reserves. So let's go in there. Hey, digital asset news coming in. You're always shilling Cardano there, Rob. Thanks for coming in, man. Cardano for the win. If you guys have not checked out digital asset news, you got to go check out that channel. My friend Rob over there does a great job, and he's always a big Cardano lover. And I invest in Cardano. I'm not a hater of Cardano. I just, I look at things a little differently in those areas. Louise, but thanks for the kudos there, man. Louise V, all gasoline cars banned by 2032. Yeah, California is kicking them out. I think we're going to continue to see that. I don't necessarily know if this is going to go over well, but it's new car sales. It's not all cars. It's just new car sales by 2035, I think, is for California. So it's coming. It is coming. Listen, I drive electric. I like it. Finally got my wife driving electric, so it's a good thing. We're doing our part. I love crypto, but I think Bitcoin mining should be prohibited. It is unnecessary because the Bitcoiners refuse to adopt. Let them suffer the consequences, says Frank B. Wow, man, this is harsh, Frank B. Harsh, I say. Jen Smith, is the government trying to pick crypto winners? Interesting point. We've talked about that before. Could be. Is Ethereum set for an interesting spot right now? Could it fall under the commodities board? If it does and it gets out under the guise of the SEC, Ethereum would boost, especially with proof of work versus proof of stake, and the shift they've made in carbon emissions, because that's really the only ESG is the push that Ethereum has been making. So I would agree with you, Jen, on that one. And Daru, Florida, yeah, Florida is hotter than California in places. You know, it's the humidity down here, that's for sure. All right, Punjab, we're all talking about going to electric cars. I'm not seeing much of a concern of saving energy. I think you're going to see more of that, and that's a good point. Is that when you looked at the amount, and I hate saying this, but I think we'll probably start to see climate control lockdowns coming. And what I mean by that is work from home day for all of a city. Those kinds of things, I think, will start to move into directions to where we see less energy consumption, which is also the tool set. But even in California, when the grid was at a problem, they were telling all the electric car owners not to charge their cars, to only use off-peak. And I think they should be doing that anyway. So that's just, listen, you just have to be smart about this stuff. But it's going to be becoming bigger and bigger of an issue. Brett Markham, what's the best guess of consequences if the SEC defines ETH as a security? I think that would be a major blow to decentralized, and in the sense that ETH would plummet. You know, I think it would take a big hit. The question would be is what alternative L1 would be able to take its place, not take its place, but take an advantage of it. Because if you're thinking as a trader, there's other opportunities. If you look at just some of the moves right here, let's look at Solana. I mean, look at this move right here on Solana with the Ethereum merge coming in. So it's not that people don't believe in these other tokens. Then you take a look at Polkadot. I mean, look right here at Polkadot's move. They also went into a top 10. Look at Matic's move right here. Everything was pumping right here on this move right here on September 7th, which our CPI called it. Right here, September 7th, pump right there on Algorand. We've talked about Algorand here on our show before. This is a really green token too. These guys are carbon negative, neutral. So, and we've talked about that. Check out our videos on Algorand with Sean and some of their team, because they do some pretty cool stuff. And if you know anything about the blockchain technology and where Silvio Micali has really kind of birthed Algorand from and what their intentions are, it is an unsung hero of crypto. They just don't market it well as a whole. And I think that's a problem because it needs a bigger community to be able to recognize what's happening over there. What would happen if the merge fails? That would be catastrophic for crypto. In general, I think that would be a negative thing, not only for Ethereum, but it would also affect so many other, just I think the faith in what blockchain evolution can be. Meaning it's only 13 years old. And this technology, though it is pretty advanced, yes, it's going to break. And yes, there are problems with it. But to be able to deal with those problems after 13 years is if you were working on any other problem for 13 years in the technology field, you would be pretty advanced, whether you're on Google Cloud, Microsoft operating systems. 13 years into Windows, we were well advanced when we were building Windows. So I think it just needs to be in there. Thanks for the super chat. Thoughts on Gala being used for gas once their L1 chain comes out? Maybe. What should we do for the price next bull run? Can they hit 3? I like Gala on the next bull run. but there are a handful of tokens that I think all of us are not even talking about right now that will be the tokens of the next bull run. Sure, there will be maybe some 2x, 3x, 4x type moves, maybe a 5x on some of the stable or altcoins that are stable in essence of that they're going to live through this bear cycle. But there's going to be some new players coming in, and I think they're going to be a lot of ESG players, and I think we're going to see some new innovation in gaming and metaverse that are tokens and projects. And remember, many of you have heard me talk about Arweave. We saw a little bit of that pump. The other aspect to Render, we talked about Render earlier this week. Render did a big pump. And the reason that Render should be watched because of the really the Metaversary, which is happening on October 11th, just in about a month. So there's a lot happening out there that I think a lot of people are still not yet seeing. This is when you identify these projects in these kinds of times. When you can identify these, another one's Omi. Omi is another one. There's many that are going to be identified, and they are going to make a run in the next cycle, much like what we saw the Solana run, the Avalanche run, those kinds of runs for sure. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. If you guys are out there on the weekend, make sure and give us some likes and spread the news on the channel. It's one of the ways that helps us, one, bring these shows to you all the time, and hopefully, frequently enough that gives you guys some insights to what's happening in the crypto space, blockchain, and Web3, all that good stuff. If you're listening in over on the podcast, just jump over here to the YouTube channel. You'll see the charts. You'll see all of our analysis right here. It's really easy. Just search Paul Barron Network. You'll find us. If you want to catch me, it is out there on Twitter. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBack.